Hi, my name is Paul Williams. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Clarity Consulting Corporation. I'd like to talk to you about reducing insider threats by improving the interview process. We're going to talk about some new ways of preempting the insider threat problem once and for all. In this presentation, we're going to start by quantifying the problem, looking at statistics gathered from 27 years of employee insider threat investigations. We're going to talk about preempting rogue employees before they can strike, not after. And we're going to talk about the top 3 threat indicators that our team has used for years to pretty much put an end to the problem. And what hopefully you'll be very surprised at is the tremendous speed this can be done with a very small number of people, even in very large corporations, enterprises, government agencies. We're going to talk about conducting the ultimate interview, using the interview process to validate candidate warning signs. And then we're going to sum some things up and maybe tell a war story that will lock the entire process together. Okay, our first topic, statistics from 27 years of employee threat investigations. A bit about the presenter. You can read this at your leisure, but I guess the part that counts most is the insider threat investigation work we've done over the years. So I've been very passionate about that. That's a subject of intense personal focus and interest and career background for a long time, and developing technologies around that. 76 insider threat investigation cases over the past 27 years of $1 million of damage or more. I have not tracked investigations less. I would imagine it would be in the hundreds. But looking at what we do know, of the case history backdrop, 25% have been initiated by our clients and 75% initiated by our team. And so what I mean by that is a quarter of our clients actually contacted us and retained our services to either lead or assist them in an insider threat investigation where they had noticed through their own devices, threat tracking, alerting systems, there is something wrong, or financial accounting, whatever the case is, employee statements or conduct had gotten out of hand, and they initiated the investigation. 3/4 were done very differently. They were done by our initiation. We were on site for some other aspect of work, cybersecurity consulting or training. And we noticed threat indicators that led us to believe there was an insider threat problem and approached the client, and the client triggered an investigation, either using their own internal resources or our team, or law enforcement, or private investigation companies. Of course, the larger companies corporations will use combinations of all those, and suspicious evidence was discovered on that employee's computer or whatever they were accessing or had been doing, and there was an investigation and arrest made. So 3/4 of all the cases we've done, the client didn't see anything wrong. They were happy with their employees, but we saw something wrong, and often in a matter of minutes after arriving on site. So the question then is, so what suspicious threat indicators markers did we notice? That's a good question, and that's why we're here, so stay tuned. So employer insider threat investigation case types. Just for the record, 88% were commercial and so far, and 12% have been government of some type. U.S. government, local, state, federal, foreign governments, friendly foreign, on 3 continents so far. We have not done that many insider threat investigations with government agencies. We do other types of work, but that's just for the record. All right, so what is the suspect job positions in the victim organization? Hopefully this kind of information is going to be helpful to someone to see. I may surprise you. 32% over the years have been IT administrators. And that's not because we're looking for them. These are the people we just happen to notice or were called in on. But 3/4 we just happen to notice. 21% were salaried non-management personnel. 16% were hourly wage personnel. 14% were managers and directors. 11% C-level executives, 4 CIOs and 1 CFO. At the moment, we don't have the breakdown at hand, but I'm thinking 2 were cases in which the client called us, okay, and the other 6 were we initiated, noticing the behavior and other threat markers you're going to see in this presentation. 8% were futures traders, particularly like, for example, energy companies may trade futures for some financial institutions to do. 5% were two or more employees working collaboratively together to defraud their company. The greatest number of employees that I've personally worked on where the employees got together and to blackmail their company was actually something like 24 employees. Of course, that's just one case, but 24 employees. It does happen. And 4% were founders and owners of their own companies. We're talking about, these are not particularly large companies, 300, 400 companies, 300, 400 employees. But again, it's kind of surprising. Why would a founder or owner of his sabotage his own company? Well, at the very end, that will be the actually war story will tell at the very end. So, top suspect driving motivation. Suspects often have multiple reasons. There's a mixture of reasons and emotions why they do what they do. But what we try very hard to do is to find the root cause of all the rest of the causes, right? Because if we can do that and tackle the root of all the causes, often a lot of ancillary and side things will fall with it instead of tackling them one by one. And so a category that we call entitlement is number one at 36%. And most insider threat statistics, again, don't break it down to the root, but we do because as mentioned, many separate cases can all be solved if we can just find this one attribute called entitlement, or number two, 33%, dissatisfaction. 16% is theft, 7% espionage. It hurts to be involved in cases in which an employee of a corporation, organization, actually aided a foreign government in sabotaging or stealing, retrieving information or data from a company. Um, in fact, I'll comment that, or just simply help a foreign adversary, foreign nation gain access to a company's IT network. So you don't know what they're going to do with that, but you have your own reasons or financial payoff for doing that. That really hurts. Uh, Revenge. 5% was just outright revenge by terminated former personnel. Some people wonder, why is that an insider threat? Well, these people are using their knowledge gained from working at this company, security system, and who's negligent, and who not to stay away from, and so forth. Maybe passwords that haven't been changed, and so forth, so on. So insider threat. And of course, 4% is just plain negligence, reckless disregard of company policies. Now, interestingly enough, I personally believe those were actually deliberate also, but they had a good enough attorney that they're able to claim that they just forgot, or that they accidentally went to sleep on the keyboard and wrote this hacking script that trashed the company. So hey, that's a good attorney, I guess. Primary suspect detection method used to trigger the investigation. Now, this is not referring to our clients. This is referring solely to our team. We don't track what methods our clients use to become aware of a problem within their organization. So this is solely our 3/4 of the cases. 38% of the time was the resume. Its distinctive resume appearance and a verbiage. We don't mean actually reading it. To read a resume and analyze all the verbiage takes time. To go back and retroactively look at all the jobs and do reference checks, all that needs to be done, but not in the context of looking for insiders. We literally might have a stack of 1,000 resumes and just go through literally at this pace, and you're going to see how that works and can quickly find very reliably. We're going to show you how. 29% of the time we use was biomarkers, distinctive body language, or visual facial features. Now, 2 times biomarkers triggered foreign intelligence investigations run not necessarily by our company, but by the appropriate responsible people on our side. But the trigger was our observations. 17% were interview questions, improper subject answers during the evaluation for a new internal position. We're going to see some examples. 11% suspicious files. Suspicious evidence was accidentally discovered by our team in the process of our work. And 5% were self-incriminating statements made to ourselves or to other employees that were recanted. I mean, not recanted, but retold to us that we flagged it, even though the person telling us may not have. Conclusions we can draw from these statistics before we move on is hire the right IT admin and keep them happy. 32% of our 76 cases were just information technology network administrators. And not only that, one thing our statistics are not able to portray is the extraordinary amount of disproportionate, severe, expensive, and time-consuming damage. It's very difficult to detect, investigate, mitigate, and recover from compared to most other ordinary employees. Uh, so that's enough said about that. The top three leading underlying issues accounted for 85% of all cases. To me, this is encouraging. What we're calling entitlement, a roll up of a lot of stuff on top of that in terms of terminology and categorization. But bottom line, this entitlement mentality is something we can stop many other categories of attacks from. So 36%, dissatisfaction with the job, 33%, and theft, 16%. And so keeping your IT admins happy is harder than it appears. Most companies do not understand their IT administrators and do not really know what motivates them and empowers them. IT administrators need a complex mix of the right job position, responsibilities, recognition, training, cool cutting edge toys, and projects, and upward promotion path to stay fully engaged with their companies. Otherwise, they can quickly begin to care more, about their cool projects and technology and things they're working on than they do the company. Combined with the wrong mentality, this is a key danger point. And I hope you notice that. Insider threats occur when a number of separate factors come together. And we've gotten a methodology down to anticipating, predicting those indicators, as have many other organizations. But what's different is the extraordinary speed at which we do it with the small number of people. We can even come into very large companies with tens of thousands of employees. We've done hundreds of thousands actually, and quickly find a population of insider threats that are actively bypassing every internal control they have, and do so in extremely short lengths of time. You're going to see some examples. So don't hesitate to seek help from employment specialists who understand IT admins from years of working on the inside of IT departments, and of course also have years of insider threat investigations. Put the two together is very powerful. I guess I should better share one thing too, is on this whole subject, on everything on this slide, we've got material, I guess training material for 2 hours just on this one topic because of the disproportionate damage it is that these individuals can cause. All right, so topic number 2 is preempting rogue employees before they can strike, not after. Sounds good to me. How are we going to do that? There's 3 top employee inside threat indicators that our team uses. Now we use a number more, but those 3 account for the discovery of most of the cases, which is why that's worth covering. Okay, let's learn how to detect employment applicants who are responsible for the majority of insider threat cases. Here's our top 3 threat indicators. And we've discovered over the last few years. And number 1 is what we're calling enhanced resume analysis to distinguish it from resume analysis. Okay, so 38% of our cases were just looking using enhanced resume analysis. And what is that? That is extracting high quality intelligence from a resume by analyzing its unique visual appearance and distinctive patterns of usage. A verbiage usage. We're not actually reading it, as mentioned, just looking at the broad categories, the layout. Again, we've got substantial training material here, but we're going to give you some functional clues that you can use starting today. But again, you need to read the resume and all that and track down references and look at fit and function. But for purposes of insider threat, we really don't care what they did before or where they work. They could be a jewel somewhere else, but it could be a threat here, or the reverse. So for our purposes, we don't need to know what their job is. They could be going for weather forecasting. The patterns of verbiage at a glance and the overall look of it, I kid you not, are what we need to go through a stack of resumes and pull one out and say, here's a person that shouldn't have been hired here. Let's take a closer look. Number 2 is utilizing biomarkers. Watching for distinctive body language and or visual face or feature markers to determine specific leading questions to ask the candidate during the interview phase. As you notice in the picture here, this individual is using his thumb to support his chin. And again, some of these prognosticators out there on the internet are always coming up with one-to-one relationships, that this always, no, it doesn't. It's all in context of a lot of things. But in the context of insider threat investigations, if this was a colleague of a person that we are informally asking questions of, and a person did this, in my experience, that's because they are anticipating a specific answer. And if we were looking for a collaborator, in my mind, we just found it. And of course, we wouldn't say anything at the time, but we'd get this individual's resume and take a glance, and we might instantly solve our problem. So there's a whole world. Now, do not be discouraged. Some of these can be complex, but the ones we're going to show you today are not. This is just a preview of what's coming up. Number 3, staged interviews. Ask specific leading questions of a candidate based on observations that were made prior to the interview. So pretty much all of our interviews are staged, where the questions we're asking are just to confirm or help us to validate certain concerns we had prior to the interview starting. And of course, there's no one perfect on this planet, not including myself. So the issue is trying to find out, is the risk that's posed by this potential hire or promotion, is it greater than the return? Is it greater than the total effort? Is it something that and what is the nature of the risk? We can tell that with great precision. If the risk is that they'll quit prematurely, maybe we can accept that. But if the risk is they'll walk away and take the keys to the kingdom, intellectual property, then that would be unacceptable risk. So we can determine all that with great accuracy. For purposes of this presentation, we're going to stick primarily with just detecting them. Detecting what they're going to do would take quite a bit more time than we're going to have for this presentation, but we do that training. So the top insider threat detection tool number 1, what is it? We have 3 tools, and here's tool number 1 that's been used to catch so many cases over the years. Enhanced resume analysis. Here's case number 1 of 2. If you look at this resume at first glance, it looks to be a pleasant resume. But again, you have to imagine we've done this for a long time. So 100,000 resumes, 10,000 phone and in-person interviews, and this just takes seconds to do. So I'm going to come a little bit easier route here. By looking at the broad patterns of verbiage, it doesn't take that much practice, probably a few hundred resumes in a few weeks, until you'll spot it instantly what you're looking for. But first, I'll set this up. Fact, it is very difficult for a candidate to prevent egotism, incompetence, insubordination, or worse, from showing up on their resumes. Enhanced resume analysis can prevent the hiring of future employee insider threats, while significantly improving workforce harmony and productivity through better hires. So what do we mean? By looking at a resume, we can tell, for example, this person doesn't like to work with women, or perhaps this person doesn't like to work with men, or this is a very argumentative person, this is a very stubborn person, this person is a potential thief, and all that's on the resume. Where? As I told you, it's not reading it. That's a different application. It's what I'm saying, the overall visual patterns and the overall layout and patterns of speech. People have tried for years to deceive our system and has not worked yet. In fact, we actually invite more attempts because we learn from those and just make ourselves better and better. But now we're going to show some things of you. So here we go. This person is saying, here's egomania suspicion. We're suspicious of this. This John M. Day, now this is the actual resume of a real insider threat case, but of course we had to change the contact information and the name, but it's identical in every other way, the formatting, okay? So to attain a position that will utilize my knowledge and capabilities, notice it's not saying at first glance what you may think it says. Many resumes have similar language, but the vast majority say the other way around. I'm looking for a job where I can use my knowledge and skills to benefit my company, or I can use my knowledge and skills for this position. That's perfectly normal. But when you see the reverse, I'm looking for a position that will use my knowledge and capabilities. Immediately we've got to flag that. Now, flag does not mean jumping up investigating someone. It means have no choice but to pull that resume out and put it to the side. Because if we go through a stack of resumes and that's the only one we've pulled out, I'm already thinking we're going to solve this case quickly, and that's what invariably happens anyway. So we need to confirm it. Remember, We're looking for egomania. Why? Because that is the top metric on our data-driven analysis. That egomania accounts for 36% of all the cases as far as the root cause. So if we can stop that, we've made a large dent in the problem. And so let's look for some backup metrics. Well, here's these certification logos are very prominently displayed above the name on the top left corner with no white space. Out of 100,000 resumes, that's the only one that has logos at the very top, at the very start, with not even blank white space preceding them. And so we're going to call that egomania confirmation right there. It's distinctive. There's always multiple on these things, but that's two. What did this employee do? We're calling him an entitled egomaniac. This entitled egomaniac employee worked for a check processing company. In October 2002, he accepted a $3 million bribe from a competitor of his employer to secretly conceal computer malware in his own company's software. His malware sabotaged the check processing software of 80 U.S. Regional banks, causing $40 million indirect hard damage. And it's uncalculable. The indirect could have been, estimate $250 million. It wasn't even tallied. It was extreme. But again, here's the interesting part. His resume was the only tool used, which led our investigators to him in just less than an hour. Critical evidence was recovered from his computer, resulting in law enforcement taking the case. So case number one. Let's talk about case number two now. So in this second case history example, the contact information has been changed again to protect the guilty. But you will notice right away, we look at the broad patterns of language, and you will notice something. There we go. We're looking for position that will use me the way I need to be used. And if that happens, we're going to be fantastic. So much more that could be said here that's in our separate training material that will suffice. So here's our egomania suspicion indicator right here. Let's confirm it. We always need confirmation to go forward, and it's always going to be there. So right off the bat, we see the giant name. Now, in practical reality, for us, the visual appearance is always first. Going through resumes, it's very easy to look for appearance. There's all different types. There's thousands of types, but these are the easiest one that result in the biggest case busters first. And so there we are. We've got the huge ratio of the name spanning the entire page. Out of 100,000 resumes, that's the only one like that. But if it had even been smaller, that's still, the ratio is very large. And there's a second indicator that's laying right on top, my vast experience and knowledge. A lot of resumes have stuff like that on it, and that's perfectly fine in a vacuum. But in context with the others, that's a lot. And in fact, altogether, there was actually 26 egomania indicators on this actual case history. So here's what actually happened in 2006. A local Texas government agency, IT servers were hacked, overridden actually, sabotaged by unknown method and origin, and strong technical evidence was uncovered from the owner of this resume from their workstation, which implicated them as being the sole perpetrator of the sabotage. So how did we go through and identify this person? Out of all the possible inside and outside personnel, how was it pinned to be on the inside? Well, some technical analysis convinced us very quickly it could not have been from the outside. That left inside. We then took a big shortcut looking through all the resume, all 600 resumes in less than an hour. Told you it's quick, resulting in flagging this resume as suspicious. There was 26 egomania indicators. This was the only resume flagged. Now, if looking through 600 resumes in less than an hour seems to be impressive, that's actually slow. We don't need that much time. That includes small talk, talking with the company's personnel, explaining what we're doing, getting the resume. That's total time. If they're already ready to go, about this fast. Okay, so it's extraordinary how fast you can go through and pick out, and again, the only resume flagged. Perhaps this is something worth paying attention to. It is. So this now leads us, that's our top insider threat detection tool number one. Now let's look at number two, utilizing biomarkers. Hold your breath here. So we have identified 6 pairs of facial feature markings that are statistically useful in employee insider threat investigations. Here's our top biomarker of the 6 pairs. In other words, if you do this long enough, if I mentioned we've done many cases, not just the 76 insider threat cases over 27 years of $1 million in damage or more, but hundreds besides. In fact, just years and years of other type of work matching people to the right job is in multiple thousands. So you get, in my case, one of my personal specialties is abstract logic, constantly seeing patterns, and it becomes very obvious when you repeatedly see the same type of facial features associated, you begin to wonder, I wonder if we can use that. And yes, you can. So when you see the same facial features repeatedly associated with the exact same crimes and the same type of crimes, begin to wonder, I wonder if we can turn this around. I wonder if we can find the face and find that case, and you can. And so we have classes there too. So here is the look. Again, now we're not going to investigate the person simply on their look, the facial features, but that's going to trigger an interview, and during the interview, their answers will determine what happens next. So imagine we have a face in which the eyebrows and the eye on the outside, there's a divergence or widening on the outside, widening, and that's what you see there. So where's the greatest total empty area? In most human beings, the ratio going across is the same. The gap going across is the same. But in some, it can narrow down going out. That's a different meaning for a different day, or widen out. And here's some actual human faces to pin with that. And so if you apply what you see on the left with the the drawing with the two individuals, you notice the first here is that the total empty area is larger than it is here. Now, this may seem to be small or obscure, but trust me, when people are trained and up to speed, they can go through stacks of pictures, badge pictures, LinkedIn pictures, Facebook pictures very quickly and immediately spot that. It does take practice, admit that, but it works. So, is the total empty area greatest on the outside of the face or on the inside? And looking over here, notice that the space going across widens out slightly, but the bigger concern is the rotated, what we call rotated eyeball. Are the eyes rotated up or down? Now, down means something different. That's another subject for another day. But in this case, most human beings, corner to corner, the eyes will be level, okay? And when they're turned up, rotated up, regardless of national origin, all those kinds of things. No such concerns there. We have what we call a biomarker that says, you know what, let me take the time to look at this person's resume or go to the next step, not investigation at this point, but pre-investigation. Statistically, this subject type is disproportionately more likely to be a self-optimistic, risk-taking decision maker who is willing to take risks to get things done. Now you say, what's wrong with that? Well, nothing if we keep it in bounds. What we're saying is they're disproportionately likely to take it out of normal bounds. Most commonly, out of the observation of colleagues. In other words, they don't necessarily do this in the observation of other people. May take most of the credit for team successes while shifting the blame for failures on colleagues. So again, that would be your anomaly correlation. When you see someone who's got this eye marker, and of course, if you are that person, you do not need to explain yourself to colleagues. And again, no one should be going and saying, hey, you're an insider threat. No, don't do that. We're saying disproportionately more likely. Okay, so to be a person that you would want to flag. And of course, the majority you wouldn't have to worry about. But when you see someone who has this biomarker, and in addition, on a regular basis, because we all do it sometime, but on a regular basis, is kind of persistent in saying, well, that wasn't my idea. I may have done it, but it was actually her idea or his idea. That's a flag, because not only did you not take responsibility, you found a way to shift it. And of course, when there's something wrong, it gets shifted elsewhere. But the minute there's any success, even on the same job, well, I did most of the work. I was the one who thought of the idea anyway. And when you see that persistently, my friends, you have an insider threat problem on your hands that needs to go to the next level in terms of being checked out. I don't necessarily mean law enforcement quite involved yet, but if you have tools and tactics and monitoring and cameras and network monitoring, now would be the time to focus on this individual's workstation, look at network traffic to and from their computer, or hire people that can do this for you. So in order to succeed, this type of person, going back down here to the bottom, may succeed in order to succeed, get their quotas, be the top salesperson, whatever job they're in, may take shortcuts in work procedure or even sabotage the success of the others. They're extremely driven to accomplish, and if they have to step on people, and I mean like sabotaging the work to get it to do, or even going to clients and tipping them off that you don't want to buy from that salesperson, you want to buy from me, we have a problem. Over a period of several years, this subject type cost may far exceed his or her contributions. It's very common that when you have this active type, that they may well be among the top 2 or 3 salespeople in the company, if not the top achiever in their department. Yeah, but over a period of time, if you track it in total losses, which include people quitting and being extremely angry in investigations, never mind outright damage, you'll find their total costs far exceed the gain. And so, again, a biomarker we've used reliably for years to flag our investigations and to steer it. So, as mentioned earlier, one of these people is a threat. You saw that on slide number 2, way back at the start. And the reason why we put that there, because if you look, you'll notice the rotated eyeballs on that individual in the center, which means, guess what? Where's the resume? Let's start down the path of checking out to see, is this productive person taking shortcuts to be productive? And therefore, at a glance, looking through pictures doesn't take long. My apologies for advancing the slide prematurely. Hopefully you can see that it doesn't take much to trigger an inside threat investigation with these new tactics that we're giving you here. So now let's talk about our top insider threat detection tool, number 3, staged interviews. Staging an interview to confirm observations you've made previously or offline, such as looking through LinkedIn, Facebook, the subject's resume, body language walking into the parking lot or into the entrance of the building or even into your office. All those things before the interview even starts, you may have a pool of things that you would like to talk to the candidate about. And so let's take a look. If we look at the broad patterns of language, we do not see the language we saw before, but we do notice, and of course, no matter what the job is, we can find this. I don't care if it's weather forecasting. We're looking at IT admins because you remember from our data-driven analysis earlier that IT admins are 38% of all the cases that we've ever noticed. And so for that reason, again, it works for any occupation. So notice the use of strong hands-on technical knowledge achieving these different certifications, of which the CCIE is a very complex certification. So the interviewer notices that and decides that we're going to ask them about that. But egomaniacs are easily tripped up by praise if you give them some deserved praise. Followed by the question is a whipsaw effect that is very good, that causes certain body language and patterns of speech were distinctive. So what we're going to do is, you notice that at the start of the interview, the interviewer also notices the biomarker of the candidate's super confident body language, as evidenced by their stance, way of talking, and voice inflections. What do I mean by that? These people may come right in and try to make themselves at home. They may try to already say things like, I can't wait until you ask me about this or that, trying to already guide the investigation or already try to, so, again, in a vacuum, that's fine, but in context, it's not. The interviewer puts these clues together and decides to test the candidate for egomania. The interviewer knows from training that egomaniacs cannot help but fall for praise. They're easily tripped up by praise. So we're going to find something, a genuine compliment. Never lie to people. I only tell people what I believe. I may not tell them everything, but I'm going to only give compliments that I mean. I mean, that's important. Your body language is correct. Your voice inflections are correct, because only say what you mean. So find something about that candidate's resume that you like, that's pertinent to the job. And we're going to start there. Now, conducting the ultimate interview. It is time to use the interview process to validate our concerns about candidates. We can either take the investigation forward or back. We have a choice. Let's get. So now the interview begins. You're taking this resume you've analyzed previously, and you're asking the candidate, telling the candidate, first of all, praising the candidate, something that's actually real and genuine. Your BAA degree and multiple technical certifications are very impressive qualifications for this position. And of course, naturally, the egomaniac response starts thinking, man, I'm going to be a hit around here. I'm hired already, right? And that's the effect you want. And of course, genuine praise, genuine accomplishments, okay? Then, of course, the candidate responds, thank you. I work hard to be the best. Now, a lot of people may say that, but in context with what comes before and after with the overall thing, egomaniacs will shine and have a lot to say that a normal candidate will not. Most people will just say thank you or nod their head or it was teamwork or may say this, but they won't say what comes next. So the interviewer, now the voice changes. Have you actually attained these certifications you're claiming? Or are you attaining them? In particular, I notice your CCIE is a very tough, expensive certification. Now remember, you went from praising the person, man, that's awesome, to like, have you really gotten those certifications? And that causes this strange whipsaw effect that results in the egomania type alone having this response. Well, I already know everything for the CCIE. In fact, it's just a matter of, for years, I've known more than the guys who haven't. In fact, it's just a matter of time of me going down and taking it implied whenever I get good and ready. That's the only thing holding me back, in other words. So there's strikes 2, 3, and 4. Notice that we're not just starting an investigation or not hiring the person based off any one strike, but it's a number of strikes. So now we're up to strike 4 now. And so now continue normally, and at the end of the interviewer is going to ask, so how did you think you did on this interviewer? And of course, the egomaniac type is always the same. Oh, I think I did great. I'm obviously a strong fit for the position. When do I start on Monday? And that's because of the initial praise. Again, I shouldn't say it's always that way. If you didn't do the interview in the style, the person may conclude they're not a fit. But because of the praise specific to the qualifications of the position, they're going to hold on to that and have that response. And so all those things cumulatively come to strike 5. There have been candidates we've seen who've had dozens of strikes. There's no doubt they're the issue. And of course, sometimes they were still hired by clients anyway. We do these preps for major clients, and sometimes they hire them anyway. And of course, there's never failed not to be an insider threat problem. Conclusion: this subject exhibits dangerously flawed egomania thinking. Do not hire for any position in your organization. All right, so going back to the resume we saw earlier, just more things you can ask during the interview just to get you thinking is, again, questions to ask if you spot this language is, you just might be potentially the best salesperson in this company if we were to hire you or promote you. What's holding you back at this company from being the best you could be? So that combination of, again, praise and question is, instead of asking a hard question about them, asking them what would hold you back might cause them to start listing things that are, and you might be utterly surprised what they say. Basically, if it wasn't for dumb colleagues and if I can hire whoever I wanted and have my own budget and all kinds of stuff, and you realize the mannerism thinking of an egomaniac. Or you can ask, and or, just how good could you be if you had all the support and everything you needed? Of course, start with, just as before, you could be the best around here. I'm impressed with you. How good could you be if you had everything you needed? The candidate just might launch into an epic tirade of you like, this is unbelievable ego here. And of course, if you saw someone with the optimistic thinking type biomarkers we mentioned before, they're both up there. Things you could ask that risk-taking biomarker to confirm it. You have a lot going for you. And again, in context of something on the resume or something they said that's specific to the job, not the personal life. I think you have the drive and determination to do what it takes to win despite our company's tight rules and procedures that seem to have a way of limiting everyone else. And of course, that will get him talking. Can you give me an example of what you've done in the past to succeed in a tight environment like this one? And again, that's just perfect to get those folks talking and often talking too much. So some HR professionals are understandably enough regard such baiting tactics as unfair. I understand that. But in my 10,000 plus phone and in-person interviews for some of the biggest companies in the world over the years, I've come to a different conclusion that flawed people, out of position people, irresponsible people, unqualified people, malicious people will always find a way to trip themselves up no matter how many breaks a persistent, experienced interview tries to give them. We really want to clear your name, but in the end, they'll just do it anyway, trip it up. So last thing we want to address is why bother to do it this way? Why not just ask every candidate every question? Why bother to do all this? Because you could, but it would take 3 hours. It actually would take you 3 straight hours of interviewing every candidate on the phone, or better yet, in person, asking everyone everything. What we've discovered that if you break it down through this process, it's less than 30 minutes. In fact, if you focus only on the insider threat problem, we're talking 10 minutes. That's it. The rest of it is fit and function and other aspects of work environment. But as far as just insider threat, 10 minutes is all you need using this approach. And that is it. Well, there's my contact information, but before you go, I promised you a good war story. Here it is. So, changing the stories so it's not obvious which company this is. Imagine a medical records company, 400 or 500 employees. The founder of the company was an engineer who basically came up with the mathematical algorithms to process medical records, couldn't get the company off the ground, brings a money guy friend in who becomes CEO. The engineer becomes chief operating officer. Fast forward several years, now the software is on the market. They've put several versions out there, hundreds of employees maintaining it. Things are good, right? Yeah, but the egomaniac inside was there the whole time waiting for an outlet. This guy begins to get the chief operating officer a little bit like, everyone's looking to the CEO during company meetings. He gets all the questions. He's the guy that's doing, the stock symbol and all that kind of stuff. And so there was one thing he could do that no one else in the company can do, and that is manipulate and fix the database schema. It's technical stuff about how databases save things and repeating rows and formats and things and so forth. And no one else had experience with that. It had been stable ever since. And so he corrupts it, but to cover it up so that it's not caught, is he sets some fires in trash cans, cut some cables, shut down some servers, delete some accounts, miscellaneous damage. And so when the company brings in some private investigators, former law enforcement guys to investigate, they need a company champion to give them access to compel people, also to compel people to not compel, but ask them to employees to talk to the investigators. The chief operating officer, being the technical one and the less busy one, was the one that got the nod. So for months, he'd been guiding the investigators everywhere else but himself, right? And so one of the investigators recommended our company. We solved this literally in an hour and a half, start to finish. Hope you see why. We told them get all the resumes lined up in 2 stacks, all the normal employees here and the IT admins in this stack. And the reason why we did that is because we noticed that among the damage that was done was deleting accounts. You have to be an IT admin to have the ability to do that. So we thought, let's look at those guys first. There's only 12 of them. And the other, 388 employees are going to be non-privileged. If we don't find our guy in this first stack, then we'll look in the larger stack. So from the time on, when we came in, from the time on site to solution was literally less than an hour. And then an hour and a half. And that includes small talk and explaining what we're going to do. Starting with the stack of 12 resumes, the seventh one we came to flagged immediately and say, here's your guy. And they said, that's the last person it could be. That's actually the resume of the company founder. And say, because again, we don't look at all that stuff. And I believe they had sanitized the resumes because some companies don't believe this stuff works, so they'll make certain changes. As long as you don't mess with the formatting, we don't care if you change the rest. And so we said, I don't care who the guy is, this is the person. And turns out, you hear the reason why he did it is because he basically, the egomaniac was there all the time, and he needed to get this outlet. And so the thing I love about what we do is it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter who the target is. We don't care about anything other than the fact that you have all the biomarkers, you've got all the indicators, and of course, technical evidence is what we actually need, or self-incrimination, in an actual formal confession in front of law enforcement, whatever. All right, so there you have it. You drop me a line, let me know what you liked, didn't like. See you next time.